The lake kept our secret too well. Aldermere lay as black as a looking-glass overturned, the moon a torn coin trembling on its surface. I stood on the boathouse steps with my pelisse tight at the throat, damp gathering at the hem of my gown, and listened for the creak of an oarlock that never came. He had said, "Wait for my signal." Not a letter, not a word entrusted to servants or the post. A signal at the water, something only we would too understand. I had laughed then, too giddy by half to fear, and promised I would come. Now the lilies hugged the bank like a conspiracy. My breath smoked in the air, and Thornvale slept, save for the one candle I fancied in the Duke's window. A single amber eye, a nightjar called. I counted heartbeats between its notes to keep from counting fears. If anyone learned I was abroad, Aunt Honoria would chide, my father would pale, and Mrs. Quill would ink me to tatters in tomorrow's on dit. Yet the mere had been ours when we were children, Thornvale and Seabourn adjoining, our parties forever migrating to water, as if we were some amphibious breed of the ton. I thought of the boy Nathaniel had been, solemn even at 12, the signet too large for his knuckle, his kindness habit rather than flourish. He had not been solemn at Grafton House last week when he asked me, low and fierce, to trust him. The east paled, birds stitched sound into the hush. No white kerchief rose on the skiff's mast. No lamp swung twice in the boathouse window. No figure cut the path. I waited until the black water turned pewter, until pewter gave way to silver, and the house stirred. Boots in the passage, kettles in the kitchen, a scurry of chambermaids beating dust from the day. I could not be found thus. I slipped back along the gravel to the terrace, pinching color into my cheeks and pretending to yawn as if I had only now come awake. The gardeners were already raking, the dowager's pet spaniel trotting a circuit with important paws. The bell for prayers would sound directly. The breakfast room would fill, rolls, eggs, and the entire company pretending to be an amiable family. I had scarcely crossed the threshold when a rustle moved like a ripple across the crowd. Heads turned to the glass, doors opening onto the lawn. The Dowager Duchess of Thornvale advanced, her cap strings floating, her expression a sermon. On her right, the Marquis of Langford, silken as a cat. On her left, Lady Beatrice Deverell, beauty gleaming like an unsheathed blade. "Pray, attend," the Dowager said, and the room obeyed. He came last. Nathaniel, his Grace of Thornvale, composed almost to cruelty. Only I knew the vibration beneath that smooth exterior. I felt it as a violin feels the bow at a distance. He stopped by the hearth, sunlight burning on his shoulder, and I saw at once what I had not believed I would ever see. The thorn ring glinting on Lady Beatrice's finger. That signet, engraved with the stag's rampant and the motto Fied Tenemus, looked like treachery on her hand. There are ways one may swoon without falling. I attempted several in rapid succession and abandoned each as useless. The room applauded. Mrs. Quill clapped with 2 fingertips. Her smile folded like a fan. My father, poor man, had the expression he wore at dice when the number fallen could not be altered. Aunt Honoria's glance cut to me, and her gloved hand squeezed my wrist under cover of her shawl. "Steady," it said. Nathaniel's jaw was marble. He bowed to the company, received felicitations as if each were a blow he was obliged to thank for, and, when his gaze reached mine, he did the strangest thing. His right hand dropped to his side. With thumb and forefinger he made a ring, an O, held it for the beat of a pulse, and then broke it slowly, pinching the circle apart until it was nothing at all. No one else would have noticed. No one else would have known that when we were 15 and Aunt Honoria's terrier had swallowed a gold hoop, we had joked. Solemn children do this, more than any, about signals made, with rings, unbroken for yes, broken for warning. He had not forgotten. I ought to have been comforted. Instead, the room swam like Aldermere. The Dowager was announcing a wedding by Michaelmas, a house party to celebrate in midsummer, settlements to be drawn, patronesses to be pleased, and I stood there with my heart like a bird in a chimney, frantic, sooty, nowhere to go. Beatrice swiveled her wrist so the ring flashed as if the sunlight might set it singing. Mrs. Quill smiled at me directly then, as if she had written the scene and I, a minor character, had been permitted to watch. Nathaniel turned to the window, his profile carved against the day. He lifted his hand again, the merest flick, a ghost of the first sign, and when he looked back at me his eyes said without sound, "Wait. Wait for what?" The signal had come too late. The ring had found another finger, and still, because I was a fool or because I loved him, I did as I had done by the lake. I waited until a footman stepped forward with a silver salver and a folded paper on it, addressed in an unknown hand to Lady Eleanor Seabourn. The library at Thornvale smells of leather, smoke, and a particular polish that has outlasted 3 dukes. I fled there after breakfast, the folded paper crinkling traitorously inside my reticule. Tess would scold me for reading it alone. Aunt Honoria would insist upon tea at least, to armor me against whatever venom lay within. But I could not parade the letter through corridors already humming with congratulations and conjecture. Sunlight poured in bars across the Turkish carpet. I set my hand upon the great partner's desk, too tall for comfort, purpose-built to make petitioners feel small, and steadied my breath. The seal had not been impressed. The paper's edge was unbitten. It was merely folded, blank on the outside, unkind in its innocence. Inside, nothing, or so it seemed. No name, no scrawl, only the faintest ghost of a thumb's pressure, as if someone had pressed the sheet hard to keep it from fluttering while they wrote, and then had not written. My heart thumped once, twice. Lemon. There was a tang like the ghost of summer on the paper. I lifted it to my face. The scent hid, then returned, shy but definite. Lemon. Juice. A voice behind me. I whirled. He stood with the door shut and his hand already on the key, as if he knew he must lock against his own better sense. Nathaniel looked more rumpled than a duke should look at 11 of the clock, his cravat imperfect, his hair too honest to please the ton. He crossed the room in 3 strides, before either of us remembered we were not allowed such strides, and stopped because the world required it. You should not be here, I said, meaning, with me, engaged to her. Anyone might come. I have 10 minutes before the dowager requires me to admire a tray of seed pearls. He tried to smile. It cracked. Eleanor. Nell, listen. If you never trust me again, trust me now. I did not choose this. I am held, he broke off, as if the word were a chain he would not name. By what? My whisper was sharper than a shout. A clause in my father's trust. The thorn ring is not sentiment. It is instrument. There is an addendum. The ring must be placed upon a bride's hand within the season, or the trustees seize certain rents and call in notes that would break the estate. Langford found a way to... No, he made a way to... He glanced at the door, then back at me, his voice lower. There are ledger entries, Eleanor. A forgery that shows Seaborn money moving through Thornvale accounts during the year my father died. If I marry you under that shadow, it will be called collusion. I would be ruined. You would be ruined. My father would never... I know. He said it with such force that I had to grip the desk to keep from reaching for him. Langford holds the false pages. He hinted at rectifying them if I... He could not finish. If you marry Lady Beatrice. The words tasted like ash. Yes. The word landed between us and would not move. He also knows of your family's debts to Mr. Latham. He would tip Mrs. Quill a whisper that the Seaborns bled Thornvale, followed by proof. Manufactured proof. The dowager. He looked away. She is all duty. She believes marriage to Miss Deverell will silence the wolves, restore confidence, and keep the ring where it must be. And what do you believe? That the wolves will learn to speak and demand forks and knives besides, he said, with a flash of the boy I remembered. That Beatrice's family requires my name more than I require their fortune. That there is a missing page, an addendum to the addendum, or some such cursed hinge which, if we find it, will unfasten this trap. Heat kindled in me at that small word. Then I am not to stand like a dutiful portrait while you star in the melodrama. His mouth curved. You are nobody's portrait. He reached as if to touch my hand. The gesture died in the air. I asked you to wait at the lake because I meant to show you something. Proof. It did not arrive. Lennox was to bring it, but Langford kept him at cards until dawn. Captain Lennox? My friend from Spain. He has a nose for mischief and dull paperwork. He believes the forgery clumsy if one knows where to look. Nathaniel tipped his head toward the paper I held. What is that? Perhaps the beginning of where to look. I spread the blank page on the desk and dragged the brass candle nearer. Tess taught me a foolish trick when we were girls. Warmth calls lemon ink out of hiding. It may call secrets, too. He laughed then, a sound that broke me more than any silence. You and Tess will be the ruin of every conspirator in London. Please, God, I said, and held the paper above the flame until the heat smarted my knuckles. Slowly, deliciously, horribly, letters browned as if rising. Through fog, a word, then another. The script precise and a little vain. Whites, window ajar, paper knife mark. The flame guttered. I steadied it with a breath. Whites, I whispered. A window, a mark. Lennox said something about the betting book. Pages torn, a knife used. Nathaniel's eyes were alight now, dangerous and beautiful, the way a storm is beautiful when one is inside looking out. If we can trace the tear, the missing page, he scraped the outer lock. We stared at one another. The ink continued to bloom. Another word unfurled like a fern. Lang. The door handle turned. The Dowager Duchess's voice, cool as a church aisle, floated in. Nathaniel, are you within? I snatched the paper to my bodice. The candle hissed. and the key turned decisively in the door. A lady may not cross the threshold of White's. That was the rule. Very well. Then the threshold must come to me. The library door turned. The dowager's cool voice brushed the air, and I folded myself behind the green baize screen that hid the atlas stand. Nathaniel moved with the ease of a man trained from cradle to bow to fate. "Mother," he said, not looking at me, "I was searching for the Gazette to see which of your friends have acquired chilblains. Shall I ring?" "You shall attend Lady Beatrice," she returned. "Mrs. Quill wishes to take down a description of the ring for her column." Tastefully done. Tastefully. I pressed the lemon letter to my bodice. The paper's heat cooled against my skin. A pause, long enough for a son to disobey. He did not. Their footsteps receded. A key scraped again. The lock settled. I stepped out, shaky-legged but whole. The words, browned by the candle, still danced in my head. White's, window ajar, paper knife mark. The world of men, smoke, cards, and a book, where fortunes were dared in ink. If the clue was real, then the forgery breathed London air. Aunt Honoria found me in the corridor, and one look threaded her arm through mine. "You have the face of a girl about to do something her mother would have done," she murmured. "Shall we order the barouche?" "In an hour," I said. "We must see White's. We cannot go in." "No," she agreed cheerfully, "but windows are democratic, and I have a bonnet no man has ever resisted." We rattled down St. James's Street at 2 of the clock. The July heat turned gently by a breeze that smelled of horses and toast. White's stood like a challenge, a handsome front with its famous bow window, gentlemen lounging within as if they had been invented solely for that purpose. No lady crossed the door, but deliveries came, footmen carried notes, and a certain window on the side lane, if one were to stroll once, twice, lingering to admire nothing at all, stood ajar. Honoria tapped the roof. "We shall drive past again. Lift your parasol as if the sun offended you. If the person we hope sees, he will signal with, oh, a handkerchief. Men do love their signals." We passed a second time. A scrap of white flicked once in the dimness beyond the sash. The tiniest pennant, raised and dropped. My breath caught. A shadowed figure, hat brim low, shoulder crooked as if to lean, against a bookcase. "Captain Lennox," I whispered. "Hold steady," Aunt Honoria said, though her eyes sparkled like a girl at a regatta. She brought the barouche up in the side lane, ostensibly to adjust a twisted strap. I let the parasol fall, leaned, and set my gloved hand upon the sill. A packet lay there, just within reach. Paper, rough and cheap, tied with an indifferent string. I stretched. Too short. Aunt Honoria coughed, dropped a glove, with prodigious clumsiness, and in the motion I gained an inch. My fingers closed on the packet, and with it slid another thing, a thin sliver of steel. "Paper knife," Aunt Honoria breathed. "Greedy providence." I tucked both beneath my shawl, my heart doing reels. From the window came the whisper of a man who knew battle. "Go." The sash nudged down an inch. We did not wait to be asked twice. We rolled onto St. James's Square before I dared open the packet. Inside, a careful copy, in Lennox's hand, of a ledger page headed Thornavale, Sundries. It showed 10 lines of figures, neat as a parson's book, but the left margin told a louder story, a straight, unforgiving edge that bore the faint roughness of a cut. The numbers were all even, all improbable, as if someone had taken accountancy for embroidery, and at the bottom, in Langford's own bold scrawl, L only, it could have been a lord's, flourish, or a lover's, but beside it, darker than the rest, a hair-thin smear of sealing wax. A page once sealed shut, then slit. "Do you see?" I urged. "The knife, and the sums. Too regular. If a page were removed from the muniments at Thornvale, a margin would show that precise straightness." Aunt Honoria's lips tightened. "This is enough to sniff the fox, but not to bring him to ground. Who else knows? Captain Lennox, Nathaniel, and now us." I looked up. Whites glittered blandly across the way, as if it had never been a trapdoor. "Mrs. Quill knows something or suspects. Langford, more than suspects. Beatrice, God knows what Beatrice knows." "Very good," Aunt Honoria said crisply. "Now we go home before we are seen, and we burn the string and hide the knife and pray. Oh, my dear." Her gloved hand flashed out to tug down the carriage curtain. A figure stood in the lane, cane tucked. Beneath his arm, hat in his hand as if greeting a sovereign. His smile was all languor, his eyes were knives. "Lady Eleanor," said the Marquis of Langford. "Too close, far too close to the barouche steps. How fortunate. I have been hoping for the pleasure of returning a lady's property." He held up my dropped parasol ring, the tiny ivory hoop that fastened the parasol shut. It dangled from his finger like a noose. He lifted it once, twice. A signal, answering a signal. "And how I do admire," he added softly, "a taste for lemon." Thornavale wore festivity like armor. Bunting fluttered in the summer wind. Archery butts stood on the lower lawn, their circles bright as targets painted on reputations. A fleet of skiffs drew up along Aldermere with ribbons tied to their masts. When a great house decides to laugh, it invites the world to listen. I had not confessed Langford's Lane encounter to anyone but Aunt Honoria. Even then, I gave her only the shape and not the flavor of my fear. He sees everything, I said. He returns what he wishes, keeps what he likes, and makes you thank him for both. Then we shall make him return something he wishes to keep, she replied, fastening my bonnet with soldierly tenderness. Smile only when it costs you. Give no one cause to pity you. And remember, a woman in possession of a paper knife is not in want of courage. The archery began after luncheon. Beatrice, superb in pale green, accepted a yew-bow as if it were a bouquet. The dowager presided beneath a striped awning with Mrs. Quill at her elbow, pen poised, a lemonade glass sweating onto her notebook, as if the very drink scented my undoing. The gentlemen played at gallantry, the ladies at innocence. Nathaniel did not look at me. I tried not to notice the effort. "Will you shoot, Lady Eleanor?" Beatrice called airily. "Or do you prefer smaller targets?" Her glance flicked to the skiffs and back. The company tittered. Only think, if a lady were to fall in, how the lilies would cling. "I do not shoot for sport," I returned, "only to hit what I aim at." "Delicious," Mrs. Quill murmured, the nib scratching. "A line worthy of type." I took the bow because I would not give Beatrice a second triumph. Tess hovered behind me like a sparrow with knives. "Breathe, milady," she murmured low. "Let your shoulders sink. The thing about bullseyes is they hate to be chased." "I am not chasing," I said through my teeth. I drew. The string purred. The arrow thudded into the inner ring. Close, not perfect. A rustle ran through the watchers. Langford's slow clap was out of time, a heartbeat behind the rest. Beatrice's arrow kissed the very center. The dowager's mouth softened. Mrs. Quill's pen sipped approval. Nathaniel made some polite noise. God bless him for politeness. It costs less than truth, and stepped back so the next lady might display herself. Later, with ices and gossip consumed, the party drifted toward the lake for boating by moonrise. Lanterns bobbed like tame stars. I had planned to avoid the water entirely, but Tess, who hears conspiracies where others hear reeds, caught my sleeve. "Ma'am, 2 of Lady Beatrice's women went by with a shawl I swear is yours." They would not dare. They would if someone told them to lay it by the boathouse bench, then happen upon it with his grace and send Miss Quill toddling down the path, compromising enough for a cruel paragraph. Tessa's eyes shone with a fox's mischief and a maid's ferocity. "Let me fetch it first." "No," I said, remembering lemon and knives and Langford's ring trick. "If they intend to catch flies, let us rearrange the web." We took the lower path, avoiding lantern pools. The boathouse crouched ahead, its wooden flank dark as a closed book. Voices traveled. Beatrice's bright thread, a deeper murmur that might have been Nathaniel's, Mrs. Quill's gentle wheeze like a bellows. I slipped along the hedge to the bench where indeed my embroidered shawl lay as if napping. Beside it, a single glove, mine again. My heart gave an angry kick. They had ransacked my drawer. "Tess," I breathed, "take the shawl. Lay it over the back of the dowager's chair. Let it be the most innocent shawl in Derbyshire. And leave this." I replaced my glove with another, Aunt Honoria's, near enough in color but unmistakably hers to any who looked closely, the palm marked with a tiny ink blot she could never keep from her right hand. If Quill's Quill thought to sketch me alone with Nathaniel here, the glove would contradict. Honoria had been with the dowager the entire evening. A lie revealed. We melted into the laurels as Beatrice approached with Mrs. Quill on her arm. Nathaniel followed, forced, his hand open and empty of mine. Beatrice made a pretty sound. "Oh, a glove. How singular. Mrs. Quill, do note that a lady's glove waits for its lady," I said, stepping from the shadows. "How good of you to watch over my poor wardrobe, Lady Beatrice. You are like a sister to me, constantly touching my things." A beat. Mrs. Quill's eyes narrowed at the blot on the glove's palm. She did not take it up. "How tiresome when a scene refuses to arrange itself," she said, not unkindly. "I suppose we must make do with archery." The dowager's fan snapped open behind us. Frost entered the air. "Lady Eleanor," she said, in that tone polite enough to be brutal, "you will join me at once. I believe you have taken altogether too much exercise in the sun today. It is unbecoming." I went because I would not allow my pride to become their entertainment. Nathaniel's gaze grazed me, apology buried under orders. Beatrice's smile thinned, then sweetened, always a confectioner with new sugar. In my chamber later, the windows thrown wide to let in lily-cool night, I set the paper knife on my dressing table and told Tess everything. Langford, White's, the copy, the cut. Her eyes widened, her mouth firmed. "We'll need proof for a vicar, not just a gossip," she said. "Proof that lives in a box, not a man's head." "As God wills," I said, touching the blade. There came a tap at my door. A housemaid slid a folded paper over the threshold and scuttled away as if she had delivered contraband. I stooped. No seal, no name. Inside, in a hand I did not. No, a single line. "If you value what breathes beneath your stays, Do not return to the boathouse at midnight. Midnight was inked twice. The voucher lay on my dressing table like a death warrant written on pasteboard. Admit Lady Eleanor Seaborn to Almack's Wednesday next. Aunt Honoria tapped it with a thimble and smiled as if she had just bought me a new life. Bread and butter and destiny, she pronounced. Do your hair simply. The patronesses despise frippery. I let Tess coil my hair with a restraint that trembled. There are nights when a lady's gown is a cuirass, stays a shield. I stepped into white muslin with a blue sash and pretended it was armor. If Nathaniel meant me to wait, he must bear watching me do it in public. Almack smelled of beeswax, lemon-watered floors, and the particular dread of daughters. The clock above the musicians commanded 10. No latecomer would pass those doors. Along the wall, matrons surveyed the throng like admirals plotting a fleet. Girls fluttered like flags. Mrs. Quill perched with a glass of innocuous lemonade and the appetite of a hawk. I danced a country dance with a baronet who counted under his breath and stepped on my hem. I danced a cotillion with a cousin who would have done better to dance with his regiment. And then the waltz set was announced. That dangerous German import, the patronesses, rationed like powder. Nathaniel stood with Beatrice before the patroness, his expression dutiful, hers triumphant. The ring glittered. My throat felt too small. He bowed. She curtsied. Permission given. They must waltz the first. That was expected. As the couples arranged themselves, Nathaniel's gaze found mine and dropped to my fan. I let the sticks whisper. Open, half close, open again. The code Tess and I had, contrived from a pamphlet and mischief. Wait, be cautious, wait. He inclined his head by a fraction. The violins breathed. They moved. Once, in the turning, he passed close enough for me to smell the starch in his linen. His hand did not touch me, and my skin burned as if it had. When the set ended, he led Beatrice to a chair with a care that might have been kindness or penance. The next waltz began. A shadow detached from a pillar and became Felix. Latham, smiling as if he had remembered my name at cards and now returned it out of gallantry. Lady Eleanor. His voice had the twang of a gentleman too long among gaming men. I am free for this set. Will you favor me? I am not engaged, I said, and wished I were. We stepped into the circle. Latham waltzed as if the world belonged to him, and he was doing it a favor by pacing it so neatly. His hand at my back was correct. His words were not. Your father plays more than he prays, he murmured, turning us past Mrs. Quill. Notes come due. There is a sponging house in Carey Street I should hate to introduce him to. My father has friends? No friend so punctual as a creditor. The Marquis of Langford is a very punctual man. He smiled down into my eyes as if speaking love. I bring you an offer, Lady Eleanor. It will sound like rescue and smell like smoke, but smoke is better than fire. What does he want? I asked, though I knew. You, of course, he chuckled. Not immediately in church, he is not a fool, but as a declared preference and attachment which in time might ripen into a match. You will allow him to be seen near you. You will accept his escort. You will go driving in the park. In return, certain little papers will be forgotten, your father's sums satisfied, Mrs. Quill's attentions redirected. And the Duke? I said, because the word cut him. He is engaged to Lady Beatrice. He shrugged, light as cream. Engagements break like sugar work in August. Rings slip. Besides, Langford never keeps all his eggs in one basket. He prefers to juggle. Consider it a compliment. He does not offer this to just anyone. We turned. The room blurred. The violins climbed. My palm grew damp in his. Humiliating. He felt it and smiled a private, filthy smile. If I refuse? I asked. Sponging house by Friday, he said cheerfully, and perhaps a charming whisper in Mrs. Quill's ear, something about lakes and midnight. Did you know lemon smells more prettily when warmed? The set ended before I could tear my hand away. He bowed. I curtsied. The world resumed its idiot chattering. Aunt Honoria appeared at my elbow like a general conjured by need. What has he said? She murmured behind her fan. Nothing I can repeat. Without blasphemy. I tried to laugh and failed. He wants me to lend him my good name on trust. He promises to return it unsullied. Men who borrow names do not return them, she said. Where is the Duke? Dancing politeness with his bride, I said, and watched Nathaniel bow to Beatrice, his mouth a disciplined line. He looked up once, as if to draw breath, and in that glance the ring signal lived. His thumb and forefinger almost met, then opened a broken circle. Warning. I felt the warning crack me open. Tess arrived with a glass of orgeat as if it were balm. Drink, she ordered. Your color's fallen through the floor. I drank. It was sweet and vile and steadied me. Lady Eleanor, said a voice like silk torn slowly. Langford. He stood at the edge of our little defensive triangle as if he had been invited to join. The park at 4 tomorrow will be delightful. You will accept my phaeton. We shall be seen. It will soothe so many nerves. I am not at liberty, I said. You will be. His bow was perfection. His smile promised ruin. By dawn, you will be. He left before I could refuse a second time. Aunt Honoria's grip tightened on my arm. By dawn, she repeated softly. We must make dawn come when and where we want it. And as if to pin the hour to my heart, a footman edged through the crowd with a silver salver. Upon it lay a calling card, my name written by a stranger's hand. On the back, in a firm, soldierly script, 4 words, Boathouse, 2 o'clock, alone. I left the house as the clocks told 2, night soaked to the skin. The path to the boathouse ran silver with dew. Lilies shut their faces like ladies who will not look at sin. I carried no lamp. The moon was enough. The need more. The boathouse door gave with a familiar gripe. Inside, the smell of tar and damp wood and old summer pressed around me. You are not alone, a voice said softly, and Captain Hugh Lennox stepped from shadow like a man accustomed to ambushes and confidences both. He was taller than memory, lean where war pairs a man, his jaw set in a way that suggested he had learned to keep it so. He bowed correctly and then grinned unexpectedly. You always did know how to keep an appointment, Lady Eleanor. You wrote the card. I did. His Grace could not. He is watched by people who sleep less than owls. He drew from his coat a folded sheet, cheap paper, precise hand, along with the sliver of a seal, brittle as shed lacquer. I owe you an apology. I was to bring you proof the other night. Langford trapped me at hazard until the dawn broke its teeth. Captain, I said, because gratitude threatened to make me foolish, if you have proof, bring it now before the lilies. Open. He laid the paper on the thwart of a skiff and weighted it with the paper knife I had left on my dressing table, which startled me until I saw Tess's neat work in my mind. A switch, a safeguard. My maid keeps my pockets the way quartermasters keep magazines. Lennox's finger tapped the margin. See that line? Too clean. Pages were torn from the Thornavale ledger. Muniments room. Neatly. Yes, but a straight edge always sings if you listen. Otherwise, sums are child sums. Pretty, even. And here, this smear of wax, someone once sealed that page to its neighbor to keep a casual eye from seeing the mismatch. Clumsy as a drummer boy after his first brandy. Langford? His mouth thinned. And Mrs. Quill receives stipends drawn through his man of business. I have not yet the paper, but I have the whisper from a clerk's frightened wife. Beatrice? He paused, weighing cruelty against truth. Beatrice knows enough to spend as if she already had Thornvale's key. She is not the architect. And the trust? I asked. Nathaniel said the ring, he repeated, with soldierly contempt for fetish. Yes, the old duke named the thorn ring in the settlement like a talisman. The addendum, now this is the clever part, binds certain rents to remain unreleased if the ring is not placed upon a lawful bride's hand before Michaelmas of the current season. There is talk among the trustees that the ring must be presented at the ceremony for validation. If the ring is mislaid, if it cannot be produced, the clause cannot be executed. Without the threat of seized rents, Langford cannot cow the dowager. And if in the interval we produce the torn page, the true addendum, his hand is shown. I stared at the dark, at the idea. You propose to, what, steal the ring? To misplace a bit of metal briefly so that truth may breathe, he returned evenly. Steal is an ugly word for a prettier justice. I prefer borrow. We return it the moment the ink that strangles Thornvale is washed away. My God, I whispered. And how would one borrow a ring that sits on Lady Beatrice's finger like a warning? By baiting a man who cannot stomach being bested. Lennox's eyes flickered with amusement. We leak, carefully, that there is an addendum in the muniments. Room at Thornavale, mislabeled. That would void everything if found. Langford will come for it with his duplicate key. We let him find something. Meanwhile, at a convenient throng, a regatta, say, or a rout, Beatrice slips the ring for washing, for flour, for gloves. A moment is enough. A clever hand is enough. Mine? I said, more breath than sound. Yours, he said simply. Or Tess's. Or mine, if Providence is kind. But you are invited where I am not. The water lapped. The world listened. I thought of bread and butter and vows, of lemon scent and knives, of the way Nathaniel's eyes had almost smiled when I called myself nobody's portrait. My blood moved like a horse at the start. Very well, I said. We will borrow a ring and return a life. Good girl, he said, and then looked mortified at his own mouth. Forgive me. Good woman. Better conspirator. The boathouse plank creaked. We both turned. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, the moon making a saint of him and the lake gloving his boots in silver. I told myself I would not come, he said hoarsely. Then I remembered I have not been brave for too long. He stepped inside, shut the door, and set his palm flat upon the thwart beside the counterfeit page. His hand shook. Lennox, tell her about the other thing. Lennox grimaced. The other thing is a little matter of Mrs. Quill's printer preparing a plate, a small engraving of a lady by a lake. If the paper appears, the dowager will wed you to Beatrice by Saturday. Special license, scandal or no. We have 3 days to find the true addendum and mislay a ring. 3 days, I repeated, tasting the number. It tasted like metal. Where is the addendum? In the muniments room, Lennox said, behind the cabinet, or so the clerk's wife swore between tears. He glanced toward the window. Langford has a duplicate key. If we can catch him with it. A whisper slid along the water, an oar feathering. Nathaniel's head snapped toward the sound. Shadows wove behind the slats. A lantern glow breathed once and died. Someone is out there, I breathed. More than one, Lennox said softly. He scooped the paper, the knife, the sliver of seal into his coat. Nathaniel reached for my hand and did not take it. The gesture, stopping a hair short of skin. You must go, he said. Now, if they find you here with me, the latch lifted. A figure filled the doorway, silk, pale, and precise as a drawn blade. Do not trouble yourselves, said Lady Beatrice, her smile a winter moon. I should hate to interrupt a burglary in its cradle. Lantern light cut the boathouse into knives. Beatrice stood as if she had been poured into the doorway and set to cool. Behind her, a groom's shadow hovered, cowled by the moon. How intimate, she observed. A duke, a soldier, and, oh, Lady Eleanor, cobwebs in your hem. Such industry at 2 of the clock must mean charity. Her gaze skimmed the thwart where the paper had been. It found nothing. Lennox's sleeve had already swallowed our sins. If you have lost your way, Lady Beatrice, I said, tasting steel, the path to the house is wider than to the lake. Kindly meant. She stepped inside until the scent of her, orris and ambition, masked the tar. His grace has a horror of damp. I came to spare him mildew. Nathaniel inclined his head with the patience of a saint before a poorly written prayer. We were speaking of the regatta, he said mildly. Captain Lennox offers to arrange a race. So late? Her smile showed little teeth. Your zeal has always been, what shall I say, nocturnal. Her eyes slid to my wrist. She saw the tremor. I willed it still. You should be careful, Lady Eleanor. The lilies are watchful, and Mrs. Quill is a botanist of the most exacting sort. She withdrew with the softest rustle, a threat without the tedium of detail. When the night took her, I breathed again. Lennox's mouth was a hard line. She did not see enough, he said. She saw me, I answered, which was the same thing. We scattered by separate paths. In my chamber, Tess met me with a warming pan and eyes bright as coals. Did you go? What did you bring back that I can scold you for? This. I drew the lemon letter from my stays and set it upon the table. We were interrupted before the heat finished its work. Tess lifted the pan like a priest with a censer and held it a hair's breadth from the paper. Slowly the ghost script rose again, brown on cream. The broken lang unfurled into lang, fjard, the writer too cautious to poi, give him whole. More curled after it. Finch, workbox, thread winders, key, muniments. Finch, I read, a bird in a cage, or a girl. Lady Beatrice's second housemaid, Tess whispered at once. Martha Finch. Pretty mouth, bad teeth, fond of ribbons. I have seen her carry my lady's red Morocco workbox to and fro. And thread winders? In the workbox. Mother of pearl shapes the size of a shilling to keep your silk tidy. Tess's eyes jumped to mine. Hide a dab of wax beneath one and you have a key's sole in your pocket. Then we fetch the sole, I said. Honoria did not blink when I told her we must visit the still room for a cordial. She walked with me like a general in a lace cap. The still room's dusk smelled of rosemary and burnt sugar. Glass bottles kept their little vigils. Martha Finch stood by the window bruising mint with a pestle as if it had offended her. Miss Finch, I said. She started, nearly lost the pestle, and curtsied to the floor. My lady, I'm sure I was only, Mrs. Draper says as the tansy won't set without, I like your ribbon, I said, because girls with pretty ribbons always listen for compliments. It was blue and too fine for a maid. Her hand flew to it. Guilt flushed her throat. Lord save me, she blurted, looking past my shoulder as if Beatrice might materialize. I only carried a box, and I never peeped, and if there were wax, it wasn't mine. Honoria sat, calm as a cat upon a cushion. Child, she said, no one has accused you of peeping, but if you have seen a gentleman use a small silver key to a certain door where old papers sleep, and if a lady gave him the means with which to make that key, and if a certain editor's purse has grown plumper of late, then the question is not whether you are wicked, but whether you will be brave. Thought. Pestle stopped. Martha Finch's breath came in stuttered stitches. I thought, she swallowed, I thought it was only to keep his grace from marrying where he liked, just for a little. Lang, my lord. He said it was to steady the dowager's nerves, to give Whitehall faith in Thornvale. He keeps the small key upon a ribbon like a watch fob. He came through the servants' passage 3 nights, maybe 4. I was told to oil the hinge and stand watch with a broom. And the workbox? She nodded miserably at the shelf. Red morocco, false bottom under the silks. The thread winders hide a bit of wax. Mr. Penry, his lordship's man, carried it away and brought it back thinner. The key was made after. Is there an addendum? My voice was a wire. Her gaze darted to the doorway, then back. There's a paper in the muniments room marked ad. I can spell a little. But then a page went missing and the steward swore, and Mrs. Quill came for tea, and my lady laughed and said pages go walking more often than men do, and, oh, have I ruined myself? You have saved yourself, Honoria said, and pressed a coin into her palm with the same ceremony she might have given a patent of nobility. And when the trumpets sound, you did not blow them. We left her sobbing into her mint. In my chamber, Tess pried the red workbox's false bottom with a hat pin while I held my breath. It yielded with a sigh. A paper petal fell, a wafer-thin scab of wax impressed with the neat profile of a key. The impression was as clear as conscience. Oh, Tess breathed. That is a thief's mirror. A proof's mirror, I corrected, fingers shaking as I folded the thing into a scrap of muslin, one that will crack a marquess. Before we could hide it, a rap like a verdict sounded on my door. I slid the muslin beneath the lining of my reticule and opened. The Dowager Duchess, in full battle cap, entered with Mrs. Quill gliding behind her like smoke. Lady Eleanor, the Dowager said, extending a printed proof upon 2 fingers, you will explain why the morning's column will contain an engraving of a lady by a lake whose profile resembles yours to a degree that offends me. Mrs. Quill set the proof on my table. The lake, the curve of a cheek, a skiff's mast like a gallows. The caption, oh God. The caption read, wait for my signal. The column ran with the speed of rumor shot in ink. By noon, every parasol in London had an opinion about ladies by lakes and the signals they wait for. By 4, Hyde Park had become a theater and the Serpentine its stage. I would not ride with Langford. He had sent a note as jaunty as a drum. My phaeton at your disposal. I returned it unopened. Aunt Honoria and I took the barouche and the long way round, the horses stepping high through sunlight sifted by plane trees. Rotten Row glittered with hacks and hopes. The ring was crowded. The air smelled of crushed grass and secrets. Chin, Honoria murmured. Not nose. Nose becomes arrogance. Chin becomes resolve. She adjusted my bonnet as if placing a helmet. We had not gone 20 yards before the Dowager's landaulet appeared, Beatrice beside her a spray of white, the ring daring the sun. Mrs. Quill sat in a curricle behind them, like a pilot fish, eyes everywhere and nowhere. Langford, magnificent in a tiger-striped waistcoat, tooled his phaeton across our path with the insolence of a man convinced the road owes him precedence. Felix Latham followed, smiling as if he had lent the day to the city. The Ondit whispered, that is she. Look, the lake girl. Did you read? The Duke. No. The Marquis. Nathaniel. Approached at a trot, his bays new shod and pleased with themselves. Beatrice placed a white-gloved hand upon his sleeve, and as he slowed to the walk, I saw the choice arrive in his eyes like weather. Smile and fan the gossip, or freeze and smother it. He bowed to my aunt. He looked at me last. Lady Eleanor, he said, and the degree of cool in his voice could have iced Madeira through its bottle. He touched his hat as a stranger does. I trust the day finds you very well. The words were correct. The absence inside them cut clean. I felt the color pull from my face like a tide leaving stones. Honoria's hand touched my sleeve, light and quick. Hold. I am excessively well, I replied, regulating my pulse to a count only warriors and dancers manage. I am overrun with health. Excellent, Beatrice murmured. Do guard it. Lakes are damp. Mrs. Quill's pencil scratched in my periphery, greedy for adjectives. Langford drew closer, reins in one hand, whip idle in the other. What a fortunate meeting, he purred. Lady Eleanor, the Serpentine is at its best. Will you not drive with me around the water? It would correct so much unkind ink. Your phaeton is too light for the weight of my reputation, I said. A ripple of laughter touched the ring. Even a colonel's mustache smiled. Langford's eyes flicked to slits. Then allow me at least to escort you at a respectful distance, he said, and fell in behind our barouche like a shadow malcontent. Nathaniel kept to the far side of the track, as if mere proximity might stain me. Once, as we turned by the Serpentine Bridge, a child's hoop rolled under his bays, and he dismounted to hand it back. And he did it with such grace that I could have wept for everyone who would read it as proof of the perfect fiancé. He did not look at me. Again. Good, Honoria breathed, watching the theatrics of the ton arrange themselves like figures in a set. He plays his part. Now we must play ours. What is ours? My voice threatened to fray. To make his coldness unnecessary, she squeezed my fingers. To go on without the protection that would unmake you. To finish what you began when you warmed that paper over a candle. We made the circuit once, twice. Each time we passed Mrs. Quill's Eyes measured us for a dress we would not wear. On the third pass, a paperboy wriggled through the shrubbery like a ferret and thrust a folded sheet up at our wheel. Latest! Latest! He cried, voice cracking. Devonshire House crushed tonight. 2 grand announcements. My stomach dropped. The sheet smelled of fresh type and penny ink. On the front, below ballets and bills, ran a tidbit from A Perspicacious Friend of Truth, the House of Vi. Devonshire opens its doors this evening to more than music. We are promised a union of a beauty and a title. And, so the wind whispers, a rescue of a gentleman of fashion from indiscreet attachments. Rescue, Honoria repeated flatly. From whom, I wonder? Across the ring, Langford lifted his whip in ludicrous salute. As he did, Felix Latham edged his hack alongside our barouche until his knee brushed the panel. He spoke without looking at me. All pleasantry for the crowd, venom for my ear. Your father's man called at my rooms, he said softly. He had tears on his boots by the time he left. The sponging house is full on Fridays. It takes a miracle to free a gentleman from Carey Street on a Saturday morning. He smiled as if telling a joke. Miracles are expensive. Fortunately, a marquess can afford them. He intends to spend one on you this evening. I stared at the high slice of sky above the trees so that my eyes would not flood. What price does he ask? Only a word from you. You will allow him to take your hand for 5 minutes in Lady Jersey's saloon. You will stand very still while he speaks to your father. You will not make a scene. And if I do, then the last of Lord Seaborn's credit will be spent on straw mattresses and gruel, he said, bowing to someone else as if he had paid me a compliment. Nathaniel's team, though, came abreast of ours again. He kept his eyes front, jaw a line, hands quiet on the reins. He did not rescue me because his rescue would drown us both. Very well, I said to no one in particular, and the words felt like buckling a cuirass. We finish it ourselves. Good girl, Honoria whispered, and this time I did not correct her. As we turned out of the park, a fleet-footed groom in Devonshire livery shouldered through the throng and reached up with a silver tray balanced on his palm. A square of heavy paper lay upon it, addressed in a hand I knew from a dozen invitations to balls I had never truly enjoyed. From Her Grace, the groom said, puffing. For Lady Eleanor Seaborn. I broke the seal. Inside, 3 lines in a secretary's careful script. Lady Eleanor will attend the Duchess this evening at 10 of the clock. Her presence is desired for 2 announcements of the first importance. 2 announcements. I heard the serpentine lap the bank like a beast tasting. I folded the card with a hand that wished to shake and did not. Prepare, Aunt Honoria said. They mean to make a show of us. Then, I answered, as the barouche rolled toward home and the sun leaned west like a conspirator, we shall choose our hour to fall or to rise. And on my dressing table, waiting as if it had grown there like a fungus, lay a scrap of paper in an unknown hand. 6 words only. Midnight. Muniments. He comes with the key. Heat, music, and breath. Devonshire House swallowed us like a jeweled serpent, its stare a river of satin, its saloons packed until the gilding sweated. The Duchess's chandeliers shed a noon at 10 of the clock. Diamonds burned in hair as if the night had decided to bloom. We were ushered to the great gallery. Patronesses ranged like heralds, musicians, striking a march for nothing but nerves. Mrs. Quill gleamed by a pillar, notebook at the ready. The Dowager of Thornevale stood beneath a portrait of some ancestor who had helped to win a war merely by staring, and beside her, Lady Beatrice shone white and victorious as a marble saint. Pray attend, the Duchess said, and the hum snapped into silence as neat as a thread cut by shears. The House of Devonshire is honored to felicitate a union, the Dowager proclaimed. His Grace, the Duke of Thornevale, and Lady Beatrice Deverell will be wed at Thornevale Chapel this Saturday by special license. Applause broke like surf. The thorn ring will be presented, her eyes flicked to mine and away, and all proper forms observed. The word Saturday struck me in the ribs. 3 days. My lungs forgot their business. Nathaniel bowed once. The muscle in his jaw beat like a trapped moth. He did not look at me. He could not. The Duchess lifted her hand for quiet and, God save me, smiled toward our corner. There is a second felicitation. Lord Seaborn, if you please. My father started as if woken from a poor dream. Felix Latham had drifted to his side like a man stepping between a debtor and a door. Langford, immaculate in black, had already arranged his features into benevolence. My lord, Langford said, voice pitched for the room and my ear, permit me to ask, before friends who wish your house no ill, to be allowed the privilege of addressing your daughter. Lady Eleanor has suffered from an unkind rumor. I am resolved that no whisper touch her again. I request her hand. He knew exactly what he did. Set the trap before witnesses. Ring it with rescue. Give my father honor he could ill afford to refuse. My father's gaze found me. I saw the figures painted in worry behind his. eyes the Carey Street straw mattresses of which Latham had spoken. He began, No, I said, because the word leapt from my heart before my manners could catch it. A collective intake. Fans paused mid-flick. The Dowager's fan snapped open with a report like a pistol. Lady Eleanor, she said, soft as frost, do not force your father to balance his dignity upon a pin. Langford bowed a hair's breadth, hurt concealed like a dagger up a sleeve. I would be patient, he murmured for me alone. But patience is not what your father can afford. Aunt Honoria's hand gripped mine so hard our bones spoke. She did not speak, for she could not give me courage I did not already own. My father swallowed and, in that infinite small motion, signed away the rest. My lord, he said to Langford, the room listening like a congregation, if my daughter's inclinations, they are mine to secure, Langford said smoothly, and I pledge I shall. Then, my father closed his eyes for 2 beats. You have my consent. Applause again, thinner this time, as if people were clapping to be sure their own names would not be printed. Mrs. Quill's pencil flew. Latham smiled at me over the Duchess's sleeve with the air of a man who has just counted correctly to 21. Nathaniel stood very still. He inclined his head to my father with a courtesy so exact, it became cruelty's twin. Beatrice reached for his arm, ring flashing, and he let her fingers find cloth, not skin. Only then did he glance at me, and the look was a clean, terrible thing. I have failed you without failing you. Wait. By midnight I had nothing left to wait with but a note and a last nerve. Muniments. He comes with the key. Honoria and Tess slipped out by the service door of the Thornavale townhouse. Captain Lennox waited in the shadow of a plane tree like a soldier playing at burglary. You are sure? He whispered. His man said the duplicate works only in this press. Sure enough to hang the devil if we catch his tail, I returned. The muniment press crouched at the end of a narrow passage off the townhouse library, iron-bound, oak-jawed, the air around it cooler by a degree as if secrets shed heat. Lennox set his shoulder to a panel and it yielded a breath. We slid inside among chests and bundles of vellum that smelled of bees and centuries. Footsteps. A key's delicate cough in a lock. We held our breath because breath is loud in a crime. The door opened. Lamplight and caution entered together. Langford's voice lazy as cream. Quickly, Penry. No dawdling. The steward suspects a misnumber. The lamplight paused at a chest. The distinct click of a small key. Papers whispered. I could not see his face. I could feel his smile prick my skin. Penry murmured, This packet, my lord? Not that. The one marked add. If it is where it ought not to be, it will be where I placed it. Silence, then a muffled oath. Gone. Impossible, Langford said very pleasantly. I do not mislay triumphs. Lennox's hand closed on my wrist. Stay. We listened to their searching, efficient as housemaids turning a room inside out. Something rustled under my shoe. I stooped. By inches and found, with a finger too brave for sense, a thin ledger folded to a dog's ear. Repairs, boathouse. June, planking replaced. Inner wharf. A smear of lake stain bled the corner. My skin tightened as if my own blood had remembered the water. Langford exhaled. The sound a blade sheathed. Very well. If it is not here, it is there. The key turned once, twice. We go north at first light. The door shut. Darkness returned to itself. I put the repair ledger into Lennox's hand. He swore softly, the oath of a man thanking God for a map to a mine. Saturday, I whispered. They mean to wed Saturday. And to fetch their insurance from the boathouse first, he said, eyes bright in the dark. We go before them. We slipped out, ghosts that had stolen a breath of truth. In my father's study, a candle guttered in a bottle. He sat with his head in his hands and a sheet before him. The sheet was a letter to the Gazette announcing my engagement. I could not stop it, he said thickly, not looking up. I have signed. If I tear it, they will print it kinder. It will not be kinder, I said, and the words shook me like a fever. But we shall not let it stand long. By dawn, the watchman cried the hour and the name of a fine, clear morning as if the city were born anew. The runners outside the newspaper office bundled a stack of broadsheets. On the front page, my name and Langford sat together like two cats tied by their tails. 3 days. I was engaged to the enemy. Nathaniel would stand at an altar with another. The lake waited between us like a last chance. Bells. Not wedding bells yet. Chapel bells rung for practice. The sexton drunk on his own importance. Thornvale burst again upon us. To the east, the park rolled like a silk ocean. To the west, Aldermere lay as if a piece of sky had fallen and not broken. It was Saturday, and I felt stitched to the day with coarse thread. We had driven through the night. Honoria and I, Tess with a carpet bag of improbabilities, Lennox riding relay. At the lodge gate, the porter slept. At the house, the dowager's household woke with that terrible cheerfulness wealthy houses have on mornings of ceremony. Ribbons, florists, footmen sluicing flagstones, everything in motion, but my heart. Forward, Honoria said, in the tone she once used for a general who lost his train of thought. Tess, The ring. Tess's task was a sin disguised as service. She carried a basket of starched gloves and lavender sachets and a bottle of rose water. Henry, Langford's man, had been given custody of a small Morocco case, the thorn ring resting on White Kid like a holy relic. The case would go to the vicar at the door of the chapel. The vicar would hold it until the vows. "Leave Mr. Penry to me," Tess breathed, her smile the innocent sort that devils wear. "I'll have him sneezing till next Tuesday." Lennox and I took the path by the yews. The boathouse crouched at the mere's edge as it had in every dream I had had since I was 15. The lilies nodded. The boards creaked in recognition. "We must be quick," Lennox said. "If Langford smells absence, he will come at a run." We pried at the inner wall where the repair ledger said a plank had been replaced. The wood sulked, then surrendered with a sigh like an old woman giving up a secret. Behind the plank, the empty dark, and then, deeper, something that was not dark but the color of tea. My hand went into the wrist. Cold kissed my skin. I pulled out a packet. It had been wrapped in sailcloth once. The lake had eaten the edges. Ink bled like bruises through the paper. A broken wafer clung to the fold, impressed with the Harrow stag. Lennox's breath hissed. He laid the packet on the bench and slid it with my maid's stolen hat pin. Inside lay a single sheet and a half because the top had torn on the nail that once held it, leaving a ragged bite. The heading in the old duke's clerkly hand, Addendum, Trust of Thornavale, Ring, and beneath, in a purer ink, the counter signature, A. Pritchard, Vicar, our Mr. Pritchard's. Father's hand, the shape of the P looping like a kind old man's laugh. "It's real," I breathed. "It's real." We read with the greed of the drowning. The clause amended the ring's power precisely. The ring to be placed upon a bride's hand freely, without coercion or pecuniary leverage, and any process procured by debt or menace void. Trustees were instructed, in doubt, to seek counsel of the parish vicar who had witnessed the addendum. There, at the bottom margin, a stain where lake water had sucked and dried, and beside it a smear that looked like lowercase l, Langford's L, or my exhausted fancy. "It's enough," Lennox said, savage and joyous. "If we can present it to the vicar and the trustees before the ring touches Beatrice's hand, the clause cannot be invoked to hold the estate. Without the threat, the dowager cannot force the marriage, and Langford stands naked, save perhaps for shame, which he does not own." Voices floated down the path. I thrust the addendum beneath my pelisse and we ran, dignity sacrificed to speed. At the turn, we nearly collided with Beatrice and Mrs. Quill. "Running, Lady Eleanor?" Beatrice's eyes widened. Genuinely, she had not expected me to be the thing she hunted. How very rustic. Mrs. Quill's gaze dropped to the damp edge of the paper showing a fraction at my hem. Her eyes lifted, and for the first time in a fortnight she looked not like a hawk, but like a woman who had remembered the first time she had been poor. "Ah," she said simply, "ink that has learned to swim." "Come," Lennox snapped, and we left them, Quill's expression following us like a blessing she had not meant to give. At the chapel door, Mr. Pritchard waited, white bands neat, hands steady. "You are late," he murmured, then saw my face and the packet. His fingers trembled once. My father's hand. I would know it among 1,000. We shoved the addendum into his keeping. He kissed it as if it were scripture and strode inside. The pews creaked as guests shifted. The dowager moved like the figurehead of a ship. Langford leaned against a pillar with the ease of a cat eyeing cream. Nathaniel stood at the chancel rail, pale, fine, a man carved rather than born. Tess slipped to my side, smelling gloriously of lavender and triumph. Mr. Penry sneezed 4 times and dropped his keys. The ring was in my basket for 12 seconds and came out no more. I cannot say where it has gone. Her eyes were wicked. But I can say where it will reappear when required. "Angel," I breathed. The procession gathered. Beatrice brilliant. Her gown a fall of light. The ring absent from her glove. Murmurs. The dowager's gaze stabbed at Penry. He paled. "The ring," she said. In that moment, she did not look at me at all. "In the vicar's custody," Penry stammered. I thought... "You thought incorrectly," she said. "Fetch it." Mr. Pritchard cleared his throat. Not the quaver of a cleric, the herald of a man who has found the instrument he needs. "Your Grace, before we proceed, the trust's clause concerning the ring requires my attention." He held the lake-stained sheet aloft. "An addendum, witnessed by my late father, declares that the ring's placement under any coercion or threat of debt is void, and that no rents may be tethered to such a ceremony. In plain words, if extortion is present, this ring cannot bind estate nor man." A thunder of silence. Then the dowager. "Impossible. Not impossible," Mr. Pritchard said gently. "Merely inconvenient to those who would use fear as a sacrament." He turned the page so she might see the hand she had known before she married the last duke. Her face changed by a degree, and in that small change the entire morning altered its course. Langford smiled, which is how you know a cornered man. "A curiosity fished from a pond. Charming. I could produce a dozen." "Then produce," Lennox said, stepping from the aisle shadow with the repair ledger in his fist. And while you are about it, explain the duplicate key you used to enter the muniment press in St. James's, and the wax impression retrieved from Lady Beatrice's workbox, and the payments carried from your agent to a certain editor. He glanced at Mrs. Quill. No disrespect. Mrs. Quill's hand went to her bosom as if memory had lodged there like a sparrow. My purse has been too plump, she said quietly. I think it has grown thinner since this morning. Beatrice's breath hitched. She looked at the dowager not with triumph, but with something like relief's small sister. I did not know the shape of it, she whispered, only that it moved when he bit it. Enough, the dowager said, but the word had lost iron. It rang like tin. She turned to Nathaniel. My son, do you stand here of your free will? He drew breath as if air were baited hooks. I stand because I was told the estate would fall if I did not. I stand because I was a coward long enough to let another place my foot. He lifted his head and his voice steadied. I do not stand of my free will. Then you shall not stand at all, she said, and sat down, as if sitting were the bravest thing she had done in 20 years. Tess produced the ring from somewhere that might have been heaven and handed it to Mr. Pritchard without a word. He closed the morocco case with a click bright as a bell. Until a day free of extortion dawns, he said, and set the case upon the altar as if it were a stone that would not be moved. The knave breathed. Murmurs turned to a rustle of shock that could, in time, learn to be approval. Langford's smile thinned and broke. You have made a scene, he said to me softly, venom stripped of velvet. How the ton adores a scene. For once, I replied, my mouth dry. So do I. The dowager stood again, older by an hour and younger by a year. The ceremony is postponed, she announced. Ladies and gentlemen, pray repair to the lawn. There is wine. People rose like corn in a wind. Nathaniel remained where he was, his eyes on me. In the hush between ripples of talk, he said my name. Eleanor. He took a step, and every breath in the chapel paused to see where he would place his foot. He took that step, and every head turned to mark it. I thought the ground might open. Instead, the dowager's voice steadied the knave like a hand to a skittish horse. Mr. Pritchard, she said, you will see to it that the addendum is copied and laid before the trustees at once. Her gaze shifted to me. Not daggers now, but something nearer to weight and weariness. Lady Eleanor, I have demanded duty of my son. I will not demand it at the cost of his soul. It was not an apology, and yet it was. Langford bowed with venomous grace. And what of my felicity, your grace? The ton adores an ending. You shall find one elsewhere, Nathaniel said, his voice at last his own, preferably in a country very far away. Lennox stepped forward, impossibly civil. A clerk from White stands ready to testify regarding your nocturnal key, my lord. You will depart before luncheon, or depart with company you do not enjoy. His hand never moved, but Langford saw the gallows in that stillness and turned white to the lips. He left by the side door like a rumor, disproved. Beatrice, stripped of triumph but not of courage, faced me across the aisle. Her mouth trembled once. You will have him, she said softly, if I may one day have something that is not arranged for me. She slipped the glove from her hand and offered it. Not as a taunt this time, but as a flag of truce. I took it. The dowager's chin lifted by the smallest degree. We were not friends. We were no longer enemies. My father found me after, his hand shaking on my sleeve. I was a coward, he said. Forgive me. You were cornered, I answered. That is a cousin of cowardice, but not its brother. He bowed his head and I kissed his cheek. A daughter rather than a duchess I did not yet dare to be. By afternoon, the trustees had met at the rectory, Mr. Pritchard presiding like an angel with spectacles. They read the lake-stained addendum, the repair ledger, Martha Finch's frightened deposition, the clerk's sworn statement about the duplicate key and wax. Mrs. Quill arrived without invitation and laid a purse on the table, coins and a note, for the vicar's poor. Then she handed me a proof no longer barbed, an apology in black and white, the headline plain, a correction respecting a lady by a lake. I wanted to hate her. I found I could only be grateful to be unmade and remade in print. At sunset, the lawns emptied. Guests fled before they might be seen approving the wrong narrative. The dowager sat with a shawl about her shoulders and dismissed everyone with a tired nod, as if she had banked a furnace at last. A knock at Aunt Honoria's door, a message carried on no tray, merely breathless. A white kerchief on the mast. Tess and I ran as if chased by 10 years. Aldermere received the dusk with its old, unbothered patience. The skiff rocked at the landing. On the Edaw short mast, a square of linen beat like a heart. Nathaniel stood in his shirt sleeves at the thwart, an oar shipped. The kerchief snared with a sailor's neat hitch. The wind toyed with it. The lake loved it. I stopped where the plank creaked. the same plank that had surrendered the addendum. "You are late," I said, because to say "you are everything" would have brought the lilies down around us. "I am," he said, smiling that boy's smile that was a man's at last. "Forgive me. I was detained in the matter of removing a marquess from my mother's horizon." He stepped onto the landing and did not take my hand. He looked at it first, as if remembering the clause we had won. "Eleanor," he said, and my name was the whole proposal except the form. "Will you accept my hand of your free will, without fear, without barter, without any lever but love?" I had never loved the law until it made poetry. "I will," I said, freely. A footfall sounded behind us. Aunt Honoria, as promised, had made all things proper. "Mr. Pritchard is on his way," she announced, breathless and triumphant, "and a certain captain has ridden to Doctors' Commons with a letter from Her Grace to the Archbishop's chaplain. Between them, we shall have a special license before the moon is out of bed." "Lennox rides like a sin," Tess observed kindly, "the sort that wins races." He came back by moonrise, mud to his collar and joy to his grin, a folded parchment dry as the road was not. The dowager appeared at the path's bend, thinner, gentler. She did not embrace me. She did what was harder. She bowed her head and said, "Bring him home." We married in the chapel by candlelight, Mr. Pritchard reading from a register that smelled of ink and oranges. Aunt Honoria cried into Tess's best handkerchief, then scolded me for making her do it. My father gave my hand steadier than I had thought he could. Thomas slipped into a pew at the last moment, hair a disgrace and heart in his eyes. Beatrice sent a bouquet of lilies with a card. "I wish you happiness," in earnest. Mrs. Quill stood well back and wrote nothing at all. It was, at last, our ceremony. No trumpets, no gazette, only vows and a ring that slid, not like a trap, but like grace. When Nathaniel placed the thorn ring upon my finger, his thumb shook. "By Tenemus," he whispered. "By faith we hold. By faith we let go," I whispered back. And we did. Of fear, of bargains, of being other people's stories. Outside, the lake breathed. He led me to the skiff, and laughing like a boy who had stolen an hour from fate, cast off. The white kerchief fluttered at the mast. The oarlocks sang. The lilies gave way as if they had never pretended to keep us. "Wait for my signal," he said, and raised the kerchief high. "There, I have sent it. Will you always come, even if dawn tries to steal you?" I asked. "Especially then." The skiff carried us into the dark, bright middle, and the shore and the old house with all its weathered pride, and the world itself looked on, and, for once, did not speak first.